Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Caroline Hyde, anchor for Bloomberg Television. Tune in daily, 2 till 5 p.m. New York time. That is when I co-anchor, of course, the show The Market Close with my great co-hosts, that is Taylor Riggs and Romain Bostick. But, of course, within our roles, within my coverage for Bloomberg News, I'm really lucky. I get to speak and regularly with some of the most powerful executives, the top money managers, government leaders as well. And therefore today I'm really excited to be hosting the CIO Exchange, Transforming Government Workspaces. Because of course, as in the private sector, governments, they're undergoing an accelerated digital transformation to equip workers to deliver mission-critical services efficiently and, of course, securely. Now, the new normal includes hybrid workspaces, where workers have the same level of performance whether in the office or working remotely, or it's delivering a smooth experience for employees and constituents, as they, of course, require the right digital and data tools in place. At today's CIO Exchange, technology executives will discuss how they are implementing and using new tech and what the results have been. They will share actual use cases, lessons learned, what's next. While the discussion will be led by government executives, the insights shared can be applied to, well, any industry or enterprise. Before we begin the program, a few housekeeping notes, though, for you, because this is a virtual event. Of course it is. So please bear with us if we experience any technical issues. If you're having trouble with audio or video quality, please refresh your browser. If you're having any trouble, open the event chat box in the bottom right corner and support will help you. This is an interactive event, so please, we encourage you, get involved, engage with us on Twitter using hashtag CIO Exchange. Discuss the event on LinkedIn, why don't you, across Facebook, wherever you like to share. I also want to acknowledge our sponsor. It's Google Chrome Enterprise for helping make this virtual briefing possible today, so thank you. Now, to get started, I will turn things over to my colleague, Anurag Rana, new Senior Analyst, Software and IT Services for our own Bloomberg Intelligence, who will moderate a discussion on technology as a service.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anurag. I am the Senior Software Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Bloomberg Intelligence is Bloomberg's in-house research arm. Part of my work goes to examine and look at mostly the large cap software names that are out there, everything from Microsoft to Amazon Web Services to Salesforce. And in the last 16 months or so have been fairly, interesting in the software space, with so much of software spending coming aboard, companies redoing the way they do business. With that, I think today's panel is going to be very interesting because we want to know what's happening on the public sector in that case. So we have a fair amount of I would say, distinguished panelists with us. And now what I'll do is I'll start with a question, and what I would request is, before you start off, please introduce yourself, and let's dive deep into it. The first and the most important question, I think, for everybody, especially for a lot of us who's working from home and not working from home, is what kind of work model are you going to embrace as you exit the pandemic? And also, what was it before, and how do you think it's going to change going forward? So, Susan, please.
Hi, I'm Susan Kellogg, and I am the Chief Deputy State CIO for North Carolina, and also the Chief Services Officer. And our model pre-pandemic was most definitely everyone in the office. We had some telework, but it was minimal, quite frankly. And after the pandemic, I think everything has changed. So we are not expecting a lot of folks to come back to the office. We're still very much a mixture of remote and a hybrid model. We have some folks in the office, but we also have others who are, the majority, quite frankly, who are office workers are working from home. So we'll continue with that. And I think we've learned quite a few lessons about our state citizens as well. They've gone through this, and so we've upped the ante on everyone's technical capability. So I see good things coming out of the pandemic.
Benny?
Hi, my name is Benny Thottam. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of New York, known as FDNY. 80% of our workforce is in the field, so the other 20% was also always in the office. So it was a no for government employees to work from home. This was an opportunity. So 95% of civilian workforce started to work from home immediately after second week of March. So now the mayor has announced that we're coming back. So we started to come back in a hybrid model, 1 day a week and to 2 days a week, and then more days a week. So the COVID experience brought the best out of technology, I should say.
Ervan?
Hello, my name is Irvin Rogers II. I am the state CIO for the great state of Ohio, OHIO. With regards to what my panelists have, co-panelists have said so far, I agree wholeheartedly. Pre-pandemic, we were traditional. Everyone was in the office. But I think, while we were in the pandemic, we proved that not only could we do it, similar to the private industry, but we were very, very productive. And there are a number of assets that have been continued to be released, which we'll talk about later. So I'm excited about our return. We're in the process of trying to figure out what that's going to look like. My guess is it'd be something more like a hybrid type of a model. So more details to come out of that. We don't want to necessarily get in front of our governor. He's been one of the leading governors out there during this pandemic. And so we want to make sure that we are ready. So from a technology perspective, we've gone through several iterations of what if then types of scenario. So we've got a playbook. We're ready. We brought in some leading experts such as Gartner, et cetera, to try and understand what other countries are doing, those that are ahead of us on the curve, so we can apply those same lessons learned to our playbook and be ready. So, and that looks like my lights just went out. And yes, I'm in the office today. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Russ?
Hi, good morning. I'm Russ Nichols. I'm the Chief Deputy State CIO for State of California. And as you can see, I'm at home today, so we're experiencing all the joys of telework and remote work, both from the home and challenges in the office with the automatic lights going out when we're not moving enough. We're very much in the same boat. Prior to the pandemic, there was conversation around remote work and telework and different mechanisms to provide government services, but there really wasn't much being done. It was very spotty. Our governor has taken a very strong stance on it. As we come out of the pandemic, his goal is to have 75% of the state workforce that can telework to continue to telework. And so we are actually reducing physical footprint in our buildings around the state and have already executed some budget reductions to help enhance that process or put that process on the fast track. So our IT organizations are working adamantly or very vigorously trying to set that up, figure out the new policies and procedures that go with that with our labor organizations, and to redefine the state services that we provide so that we can allow that remote workforce to work from where they are.
So, just sticking with this topic, what technologies did you have to implement as soon as, you needed to know that, you were going to go through this massive transition? So what kind of work did you guys do?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't sure who that was directed to.
Oh, anybody. I'm sorry. I apologize. It's open to everybody.
It's okay. I'll go ahead and jump in. We were already in progress of moving to a telephony platform that was going to allow us to do the movement that we needed to. So the flexibility that technology brings in the times of when you don't know where the office is going to be, it may be here today, maybe here tomorrow. We had those plans rolled out, so we just sped those up. Most of our employees had laptops, but not all. And so we were busily hunting and getting laptops, and we are in the process as folks are refreshing at this point. We are very focused on getting laptops for that portability. So little things like that you don't really, of course, we never thought this could happen, but those were huge helps. And so I think we were fortunate in North Carolina. We had a lot of things already in place.
So I'll jump in on that as well. In California, we did have a number of things in place, but we had to scale them dramatically. So we had, our finger in the pool for telework, and we'd set up some technology to do virtual desktops or remote access, but we had to vastly expand that, and frankly, implement a lot of the services that go around it to ensure security. So multi-factor authentication was not used consistently across our organizations. So implementing those things. And frankly, scaling some of that security depending on who or where you are. Some of the processes that involve court hearings take a lot more security and privacy controls than something that's just a generic transaction with a typical state entity. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. We had to look at the use cases organization by organization and make sure that we stood up tools that would allow them to be successful in that type of environment. So anything from legislative hearings to, how do I renew my driver's license? All of those processes have to be evaluated.
Yeah, so I'll jump in next. With regards to Ohio, one of the things that, I think gave us a head start is that I woke up in the middle of the night with this nightmare that, disaster recovery. And so I went in the next day, and my team was like, oh man, he's been up since 3:30. We're in for it. And I started whiteboarding out, okay, do we have this? Do we have that? Do we have this? And so we brought in a whole bunch of industry experts and started talking about our disaster recovery plans. And so that started 6 months before this pandemic started. So it wasn't a matter of trying to figure out, okay, did you update the plan? Is it dusty? Is it, has someone tried it? And in addition to that, we found out gaps where, we didn't have the ability for folks to work, remote if we needed to. So we tried it out a couple times. So within 2 weeks, we were able to get 55,000 employees home. And I think part of that was just, sheer luck. I'm not going to say I got like a magic ball and I'm the wise one, but I would say it was, it was luck that helped us to make sure we were ahead of that curve. The other thing is that, we were struggling a little bit with Microsoft Teams adoption. At this point, if I attempted to try and take away Microsoft Teams from anybody, there would be, there would be fights all over the place. Whereas before, I couldn't get them to, talk about this new technology and try it. So our adoption, went through the roof. We did have some other scenarios as to your earlier point with regards to use cases where teams didn't necessarily fit. So we had to kind of adapt, especially in the court environment. So it's been an exciting time. And our team here, I call them the Ohio IT Avengers. We've leaned into the pandemic for a better outcome.
So I should chime in also. The story is same with the New York City also. We just have to expand what we already had. So historically, IT folks always worked remotely, not regular hours, but off hours. We had to work off hours all the time. So we had to expand the solutions we already have, including buying additional laptops. Our vendor partners are very helpful to us to deliver even before getting their money. So it was good for our case too.
No, that's good. And how it has changed the services that you provide to your constituents. How have they changed because of this of the pandemic, and because of the technology that you're put in?
So I'll jump in first. Here we have a concept here called Innovate Ohio that's led by our Lieutenant Governor, John Husted. He's also our Chief Innovative Officer. I'm fortunate that we have a really good working relationship where we partner together. I take care of the technology and we meet up, in the middle for the strategic, piece of it, the strategy. And his lofty goal, and that's part of the campaign, was that he wanted to make it so that our citizens never had to go into a government building. That is a lofty goal, especially when you're trying to modernize on the fly in the middle of a pandemic. We didn't hit all A's, all categories. However, I think we reacted very quickly. One of the areas that was kind of a joke here in Ohio was that the governor broke the internet. Our governor wanted to have basically daily press conferences. And so that worked for a little while where the newscasters were willing to carry that signal, but that was starting to interrupt their, daily flow. So we needed to, leverage our Ohio channel outlet. Unfortunately, it was only tuned for about 500 users because that's probably the max that we would get nobody tuned in the state government. Let's just be honest, right? And so, but when during this pandemic, everybody and their mother wants to know because it was stay at home. So unfortunately, after 3 days, I knew working for him for the last 6.5, close to 7 years, that his patients are, he wants it tomorrow. And so we started partnering on the back end with one of our cloud smart vendors, AWS, and used their streaming services so that we could go from 500 concurrent users to over 240,000 per second. So that gave us the ability to get out there and get the broadcast out, and folks could tune in, get to our coronavirus.ohio.gov website. So that's what I would say to that.
Anyone?
So government started to take, right, even before that, started to take electronic documents and signature, and we started to give more self-services, but COVID made us to do it to another level. For example, in New York City Fire Department provides certificate of fitness to operate certain equipments and devices. So the mayor announced that the test for certificate of fitness for propane tanks was going to be given online. So we had to hustle and make that online test in less than 3 weeks. So innovations like this happen, and then our constituents also embraced it, thankfully.
And I'd say, and I think we all experienced this during the pandemic. More than ever, citizens were really interested in what the government wanted to say. So, Irvin, to kind of your point about the press conferences, it was, we want to hear, we want to, for employment benefits, need to reach out, et cetera. So what we saw was the need and ability to scale rapidly was something that we had to have in place, and particularly with call centers. And it's not just the technology in those cases. You've got to have people who know what they're talking about when they answer the phone. Or that's a frustrating experience. I can get to you fast, but I can't get an answer. So, we've done a lot to really focus on that customer journey and the experience of the citizen, and mapping out what those are. We have a group of about 400 citizens that we use to do testing for our nc.gov environment and make sure that what we're doing is something that's going to work for them. So I think we've had a lot more day-to-day, it's our next door neighbor touching the state government, where maybe not that wasn't the case before. And everyone wants to know, what is the government doing? How are they helping us? So it's raised our profile and our awareness. So it's been a very positive thing.
I completely agree. I think that focus on the user experience is greatly escalated compared to where it was, a year ago in the way we looked at designing government services. But it's also brought some challenges, in we need to bring some new skill sets and some new tools to the table in order to be able to do that. We've got to fundamentally look at providing services differently, so that people don't have to come stand in the lobby of a state office or something along those lines. How do we meet them where they are, which could be a mobile device, sitting on their couch or sitting in a park when they need a service, and to take out all of the steps where they have to drive to an office or get to a PC that's sitting on their desk at home or at their office. How do we collapse that process, meet them where they are when they need that service? It really takes some different thinking and processes, and some of those, and I alluded to this a little bit ago, some of those services, when you're applying for benefits, we absolutely have to prove who that person is. Mm-hmm. And in person, that's much easier when someone can show you a document, a passport, a driver's license, real ID, something along those lines. Doing that in a virtual environment is a much different challenge. And I think a lot of jurisdictions are struggling with that and trying to quickly navigate that process to bring up a service that a year ago we really either hadn't thought about or was fairly immature.
Yeah, Russ, I think, what you're mentioning is something that I'm seeing a lot in the commercial space. So I'm going to just again, extend the same question and say, I am interacting with a lot of my businesses or areas, let's say through a chat bot, through more virtual ways, or I can get more work done whether it's closing a house or buying a car, without actually having to step into a dealership or to a lawyer's office. As you look beyond your next phase of I would say evolution, are you thinking about services where a lot of these will be delivered virtually, or are you still scaling back on that? So what other, I would say, emerging technologies are you thinking about as you are going through this journey?
So absolutely, we're looking at those services. There are some things at this point, for example, if you are applying for a driver's license and you need a driver's test, you need to be in the vehicle sitting next to an evaluator. Maybe that changes a few years down the line, but right now, frankly, you still need to have that personal contact. But the paperwork and all the process that precedes that could be done remotely, so that you come in for the test, execute the test, and then you're gone. But there will be more and more technology. So as we develop these tools that allow us to do it virtually, we can use artificial intelligence or just technology enhancements to make sure that we're meeting folks that have ADA needs, whether it's adaptations on a screen or language conversions or things along those lines. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of organizations forget that step up front, and it's a bolt-on as a second step. And so using those tools, we can bring that to bear and start to get into the norm as designing that as a digital transaction first that is adaptive to screen readers or translators or whatever it might be that the consumer needs. And again, it's really focusing on meeting the client where they are in a manner that meets their needs to consume the service.
And I'd say for us,
is an evolution, right? Earlier, IT developed file and retrieval system. Basically, I go to a file cabinet, opened a paper, and then did something with it. So we automated that. Then we applied business processes on top of that. And with more business processes automation, we can then provide those services directly to our end users, our constituents. Private has been doing it for a long time. Government started slowly, and it will continue. And embracing cloud technologies, it will enable us more to do that. So I think it is, like everyone said here, all the panelists said that it's all going to the right direction, and government is following what private has been doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of so we were talking about employment services. We looked at virtual assistants, and a lot of the materials that we had, we didn't have this plethora of digital material for a virtual assistant to learn and work off of, and didn't have the confidence because we hadn't worked with it enough to for that virtual assistant would give the right answer, or let's say not be tomorrow's headline. And one example is we were testing and we said, I've lost my job, and the virtual assistant said, "Oh, that's nice." And no, that's not. That is not an answer we want on the newspaper. And so we have to think of those things as well. That there's the human touch, and we feel very comfortable with that person is going to be able to understand the situation and respond appropriately. Can the technology? And that's just going to take us working in non-emergency situations more and more. The other thing was the process automation components. We have some of these legacy systems. They're going to be there. We're not going to be able to get rid of these very large systems overnight. And I think all states are working towards that digital transformation, if you will. But when you've got these systems that a person to train someone, so for instance, in the call centers, they're going from this screen to this screen. And if we can automate some of between these large systems and some of these owners' processes, that's going to speed it up. Before, we didn't have a good business case for doing the work to get to that automation. this is the business case of all business cases, because no one wants to go through this again and be on the negative end of we can't answer calls fast enough. We've got people frustrated because they've been on hold for 8 hours and can't get through. So I think we will be doing a lot of work in the next few years to overcome some of these things in the interim. So not just replacing systems, but also how do we get the systems that we have today working better so that we can serve the citizens faster.
No, that's a great answer. In fact, Betty said something just now in terms of cloud, and that really is the one theme that's resonating so well with a lot of the companies that we cover. And from that context, is that something that you are you going to increase your, let's say, budgets by a little bit going forward, or is it going to be quite a bit? Like how do we think about how the governments are going to evolve when it comes to cloud adoption or digital transformation?
So I'll take this one with regard, or I'll start it with regards to the stuff that we're doing here in Ohio. I remember my first interview that I did at one of the NASCIO, National Association of State CIO conferences, and I was like, I'm going to stand on Cloud Smart. Well, I hadn't quite figured out it, but it's one of the best things that put my money on. We've worked on it for the last 2.5 years, and it is proven to be one of our best assets, because ultimately it gets back to that NASCIO model of this as a CIO, as a broker. I call it CIO cloud broker, in which we're setting up, from a cloud architect perspective, we are concentrating those at the center, making sure that infrastructure is set up appropriately. I mean, it's one thing to get into the cloud, but if you don't set it up right, oh my gosh, I mean, it's all it takes is a credit card to get it set up. But you have to make sure that you begin with security in mind so that you have a better product in the very end. And that's what our Cloud Smart initiative enables the agency, so that they can take it from the application layer and deliver and not have to worry about that or replicate those skill sets with regards to all over the enterprise. So, as new projects need to get spun up, whether it's, we've got approximately 5 major vendors everywhere from Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google just recently got added on, Oracle, and Salesforce. I mean, what vendor is not going cloud, to your point? I mean, you've got to get in the game. If you don't get in the game, you're going to get left behind. I just want to touch back on the previous question. From an AI standpoint, we have several bots that we have enabled for those, repetitive types of requests, right? To the point that was made earlier, we don't necessarily want to continue to, have the computer, answer inappropriately. So we assign various tasks, because I think you still need, to Susan's point, that human touch. If not, you could, have it respond the inappropriate way. But yes, cloud is the future, and that's where many of the applications are going. Cloud, software as a service.
So Anurag was talking about budget and what budget you're allocating for future development or automation. New York City Comptroller and New York City's budget office gave us a big win in embracing cloud technologies by allowing us to capitalize cloud services. So in addition to consume application as a service over the cloud, we are also consuming platform and infrastructure services, so we could deliver our own services directly to our end users or our own employees. So New York City Fire Department has been using that for some time, but making it capital eligible, it will empower us more and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're doing the same thing. We're very fortunate that our legislature, as well as our organization, saw cloud as being something that was critical. So we have a cloud broker, and we have a pretty robust cloud security strategy that and again, it went from here are the components, we have the pieces, to, okay, we're going to use this a lot in the last year. And so we've seen a great deal of increase there. I think part of what we've got to do is move and migrate other things that are on-prem to the cloud and continue to leverage this. There's just a lot of benefits. And again, I think we got through some of the scary part in the past year, where going so high technology, going remote, going to the cloud, these are all things they've been proven out now. So we can move beyond that. And as technologists, that's a great place to be, because I think all of us have probably been pushing that stone up the hill a little bit over the years. So to have it play out so nicely, now wouldn't want to go through that again. Let's be clear. I'm not advocating another. But there have been benefits. And so, through the crisis, I think the IT organizations in the states have really risen to the challenge and to the needs of the state nicely.
Right. I agree with everything that's been said, and I like the terminology of cloud smart. A lot of organizations have gone for cloud first or cloud only, and it's not always the right answer. And so, to have an evaluation in there, but even beyond the technology layer, a piece that I think we're all realizing we struggle with, back to your question on budgets and how things are approved, saying that we're going to go to a cloud provider because that's the best solution is only part of the answer. If it takes us 18 months to get there because of budget cycles or, bureaucracy and project approvals and things like that, you're losing some of the efficiency of going to that platform that already exists. So the technology absolutely is an accelerant that helps with that, but then we've got to look inwardly and make sure that we've got the skill sets and the processes that support making that transition, so that we're basically not jumping off a cliff as we try to do it.
No, that's excellent. All right, so we got about 6 minutes left. Hoping to get one last question in for all of you. What is your greatest success story over the last year? So if you mind, wrapping that up in a minute and a half each, that would be good, please. Susan?
Okay, I'll jump in. There's been a lot, I have to say. The thing that I am absolutely the proudest of is how we as our organization, like many state, sorry, I've got a fan over here. He's, with us being a central organization and we serve all the agencies across the state of North Carolina, it was our moment to shine. And so when the state said, we're going home, we were there at every turn, doing everything we could to get people systems, to get them home, to get them set up, to get them trained. Unemployment was a early story as folks were in, and so we spent the year going from this situation to this situation to this situation, and in each case we were able to really be that partner that we have said and begged to be, quite frankly, over the years. And so it was very helpful for us to be able to demonstrate that. And our folks rose to the occasion. There was no doubt about it. There was no, I'm worried about myself. I'm worried about that. It was, what can we do? And that has continued as we went through the vaccine rollout. It was the same thing. That was a huge list for our Health and Human Services organization, and we did everything to be there for them. And as I called, we kind of lurked on the edges to make sure that they had all the components and pieces that they needed to, from a technology standpoint, to get the vaccine out to our neighbors and ourselves.
Yeah, to Susan's point, I was high-fiving you. I was being your hype man in the background.
There you go. That wasn't the light.
The lights. It's a funny thing to be back in the office. With regards to, some of the things I'm most proud of, definitely I would say our Innovate Ohio platform, our ability to provide statistics, data analytics, for the average citizen, all the way to those that are wanting to be more technical in nature, being able to download the information. One of our major releases during a pandemic is our data portal. I'm not sure, companies, organizations that are releasing that kind of, materials and assets to the public, but we released it in December of 2020, and it's gotten rave reviews where folks are able to go in securely, following all security protocols and regulations, not going to answer requests for information data sets. We have over 220 data sets that are there that people can go and request. So I'll pass the mic.
I have to say that I'm so proud of my IT organization, my IT staff, for working, like I mentioned before, in different hours and making sure that our assets are secured. And then we had to, our IT helped us, our application development team, and also my operations team. They had to make technology available so people can work from home. And also we built an application in less than 2 weeks to register and schedule for vaccines, because the fire department administered vaccines for our staff, families, retirees. So we built our own application for that. I also need to thank my leadership for giving us the courage and freedom to go on and do the needed to provide support for all our employees. So it's always been great to work for fire department.
I think across the entire technology community, we got a real lesson in disaster recovery that maybe we had planned for, but nobody anticipated it being this big or this long. We looked at those events as much more temporary than they turned out to be. And so that adaptation, that willingness to just step into the fire and find a solution demonstrates a lot of resolution that we didn't know about. And I think one of the pieces that we probably all had to figure out is how we bring in our partners and our supporting vendors quickly to help solve those problems. Our normal bureaucratic procurement processes are very, very long and drawn out, and we had to figure out how to do things in days, not weeks or months. And I think we're all very successful with that. I'm very proud of what we've done across all of our departments and our centralized department to pull that off.
No, that's excellent. I mean, from our side, as I see, what's happening across the landscape, it's been a massive uptick in, technology embracement, whether it's, as you said, Microsoft Teams or AWS or Google or any of these other companies that are providing not just communication services, but commerce services. And I'm truly happy to hear everything that you have said, because I know down the road, my life is going to be a lot easier, whether it's to renew a license or to pay any bills or to reach out to any of the, government organizations to get any data. And I think that's really, the biggest silver lining of all of this is that we're going to be far more digital down the road. So with that, thanks everybody for their time, and it's been absolutely great to talk to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You set people up for success by simply having them use Chrome OS. You don't have to do rigorous security trainings and things like that when you just have a platform that's secure by default.
The security applications that exist on Chrome OS are pretty much invisible to me. You just log in and go.
I'm Pooja Malpani, the CTO for Bloomberg Media. Today, I'm here with Loren Hudziak, Google Chrome Enterprise Customer Engineer, to share what the hybrid transformation means and what Google is doing to prepare for hybrid work using modern technologies as a key enabler. In some places, new cases are surging and returning to work is the last thing on people's minds. In other areas, conditions are improving and companies are starting to think about transitioning their workforce back to the office. Loren, what are some technology trends you are seeing in the workplace?
Hi, Pooja. Yeah. Well, as we've seen over the past year, IT teams have had to quickly provide employee access to cloud-based business applications. And this is a trend that we're expecting to continue as more and more applications are becoming cloud-based. And this is so that we meet the needs of a hybrid workforce. Up to 78% of IT decision makers report that their goal is to provide all employees cloud-based access to business applications within the next 2 years. And at the same time, more than half of HR leaders say that poor technology or infrastructure for remote working is the biggest barrier to an effective transition to a distributed workforce. It's becoming pretty evident that disruptive and poor user experience with devices and apps that aren't built to be cloud first are resulting in this really poor collaboration and productivity experience. So there really hasn't ever been a greater need for both the right tools and endpoints in place to make sure that employees are effective and productive, no matter where they work.
What does Google's return to office look like?
So at Google, we'll be moving to a hybrid work week where most Googlers spend approximately 3 days in the office and then 2 days from wherever they work best. It should come as no surprise that as the modern, secure, cloud-first platform, that Chrome OS is going to play a key role in our transition to a hybrid work model. Because Chrome OS devices can really be easily shared, that provides much more flexible working models and working spaces. And because user profiles are stored in the cloud, along with collaboration solutions like Google Workspace, employees can log into a Chrome OS device and access what they need and pick up right where they left off.
Diving a little deeper, what technologies are you using to support the return to office?
Yes, sure. I touched on a few ways that we're using Chrome OS and tools to support our return to office. So in certain office locations, Googlers can actually reserve desks through this internal booking and monitoring tool that we've set up with a high-performance Chrome box. And we use a keyboard, a mouse, and a monitor. And employees can log into the Chrome box, which syncs their cloud profile, and then start working within that same environment that they have on all of their Chrome OS devices. We're also announcing these new docking stations that are designed specifically for Chrome OS devices and allow employees to bring their Chromebook from home and connect to the dock with a single USB cable, and then use a monitor, keyboard, and a mouse for a complete and full desktop experience. Every Chrome OS device enables this zero trust security working model. We're using Beyond Core Enterprise to provide that. It gives our workforce a very simple yet secure access to applications, and at the same time provides this additional security controls for our IT division.
My last question, what advice do you have for business leaders as they begin the return to office?
While employees have adapted really well, with these new ways of working, there are challenges that still remain that comprise IT and employee experiences that could really slow the return to office. So when you're thinking about making your way back to the office, keep in mind what your employees and IT teams really need. Flexible, secure, cost-effective, simple solutions for the endpoint and their management tools that really help employees work from either office or home. You want an easy access to work tools and apps that help employees maximize productivity as well as collaboration, and simple yet easy management of multiple devices from a single location. Quick deployment for IT, and at the same time, providing a return on your technology investment. Chrome OS devices are designed to support both this hybrid and complete return to office strategy. And we've got some really great resources on how to get started, as well as useful tips to enable employees to be effective and productive from either the office, the home, or really anywhere.
Thanks, Loren. Appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Pooja.
Now, let's dig even more in depth, a case study for you on how government work is being transformed. I'd like to bring in Nancy Seeger. She's Chief Investment Officer at the Internal Revenue Service. Nancy Seeger, what a joy it is to have you with us. Of course, CIO, Chief Information Officer of the IRS, in that role since February of this year, but really acting in that role for much longer than that, since June 2019. And I first and foremost, Nancy, want to get across to our audience just what a Herculean task you have had since taking on that acting role. What a year 2020 was, what action you had to take, a new way of indeed helping the nation, save the nation, of course, as we saw rescue plans come into reality. What sort of pressure did that put on the IRS? What did you have to put into practice?
Well, thank you for having me here, Carolyn. It's an absolute pleasure. As you can imagine, this past year was just a year full of tremendous change, and we didn't have a playbook. You know, I'd like to be so bold that technology is what ensured the government continued to provide services to our citizens. As you said, I was acting since June of 2019, recently became the permanent CIO. Not a lot of difference between the role as an actor and the permanent CIO. Over the last year, the entire government, in fact, the entire world, had to be locked down. Government was called upon to provide more and more services, and everything that we had as our playbook got set aside. At the Internal Revenue Service, we remained focused on servicing our customers, on modernizing our work environment, and helping those in need.
Modernizing your work environment. Dig into that a little bit for us, because of course many of our listeners are going to have seen their own technology stressed, their own infrastructure stressed, of how you have so many people working from home, and now that becoming a real reality for many as well. How did you ensure that your employee base were able to be fit for the task that was ahead of them?
Yeah, in fact, when the government was closed, 90% of IRS offices were closed. About 62,000 IRS employees were no longer coming into an office. During the pandemic, we immediately made some infrastructure changes to support our entire workforce teleworking. We went from 3% of our workforce who could work remotely to 98% of our employees working remotely, engaging via Zoom and other tools, just like you and I are today.
So managed to get that rolling out, I assume, relatively swiftly, not without some teething issues, as many are employer, public and private experienced. Tell us how, of course, when you were looking at the rounds of economic interest payments, when you're looking at, of course, the individual tax refunds as well, what sort of pressure did that put on your own systems? Was that something that the IRS was already fit for purpose? It was just a way of enacting it in a different way from a technology perspective? Or did you have to roll out entirely new ways of serving your community?
You know, let me paint the picture for what the last year looked like from a technology perspective at the IRS. It's March 2020. The offices are closing. Our employees are concerned for their health and safety. We're not a telework organization. We get a significant legislative package, the CARES Act, that enabled the government to issue economic impact payments for our citizens. We're also in the midst of a tax filing season. In 2020, while the return due date for tax filing was ultimately extended, it wasn't extended immediately. So it's March, we've got legislation, we've got human beings who don't really know what's happening. We need to process tax returns. I have to tell you, I am so proud of the Internal Revenue workforce. We saw an opportunity to help this country, and we quickly pivoted and issued economic impact payments to more than 100 million people as early as 2 weeks after the legislation passed. We did that by looking at our systems to ensure that they were performing, but for the most part, it was on the existing tax infrastructure that we have. Many of you may have read recently in the news about the American Rescue Plan, which provided additional funding for the Internal Revenue Service to modernize our technology foundation. But tax filing season, economic impact payments were all delivered within our existing technology infrastructure.
Okay, so do you feel that the investment is really necessary? How much do you want to upgrade the infrastructure? Was it fit for purpose, or were there real areas that you immediately could see could do with some more funding?
An investment in IRS technology is absolutely necessary. Think about an old house that you're remodeling. You can't just put a new roof and paint on the walls. Your electrical system may not support the new things you want to bring home. Modernizing technology in any business, especially in Internal Revenue Service, where we are charged with providing services to citizens, collecting 96% of the revenue that our country collects, ensuring the security of all of the taxpayer and the nation's data, it is absolutely that we transform the way we work. We have a foundation of old technology that we keep layering upon. We must stop and make a digital transformation. We must turn into a data-driven technology shop. We must move old technology off of our premises and move to the cloud, all so that we can more dynamically serve our customers. Today in our operational environment, the first question that's asked is, how quickly can you do this? Can you do this? In a modernized fashion, the Internal Revenue Service will be able to more dynamically provide the services that we need to provide.
Okay, Nancy, so let's go to, for example, going off-prem, getting into a cloud or a hybrid cloud of whatever nature. Is that already being done by you? How seamlessly can you do that while also functioning and ensuring that the day-to-days gets done while you're upgrading the infrastructure behind it?
Hopefully, to our customers, it will be extremely seamless. We are working behind the scenes as we speak to move our infrastructure to the cloud. We have already done that for many of our services. We typically focus on those big modernization efforts after tax deadlines pass, before the next filing season in a very integrated fashion. We must deliver those services while modernizing, which has been one of our challenges of the past.
What do you think, from a consumer perspective, will be most notable? Because there's been a lot of calls for money to be spent, billions that have now been promised, of course, by the Biden administration to upgrade the IRS systems. There's focus on technology. There's focus on just tracking the data that little bit more extensively to know what people actually owe and how efficient the IRS is at ensuring they're getting the revenue that they are really deemed to be owed. What do you think will change most obviously from an outsider looking in?
You know, what will our citizens or our customers see once the IRS becomes more modernized? More online services, maybe more of a banking service. We go home from our jobs and we get online to see, did our bank account get deposited? From a taxpayer perspective, we would like to provide more online services for our citizens to understand their status of their account with the Internal Revenue Service. Today, when you call us, you may not always get through, and we don't like that. We would like to offer more automation on our phones so that citizens can chat with us, maybe bring in some more automation for the simpler calls, and ultimately offer more customer callback. We like to look at it in terms of make filing easier for our citizens, make payments easier, provide stronger online services, and provide them improved telephone services when they do need us.
And so how do you go about doing that, buying that? I mean, are you looking at a whole array of providers to give that to you? Is it something that you have people come and bid for the work? What is it when you're going out and looking to how to source and make these changes?
We have a variety of vehicles available to us to do that. First of all, we have a top-notch technology staff who have the skills and talent to do that. The challenge is operating the car while changing the tires, right? We're not NASCAR. We can't do that in line. We do rely on services from contracting partners, but more heavily, we take a very integrated program approach to planning our delivery and modernizing while we provide the services, which unfortunately sometimes slows us down. We are looking at accelerating some services while introducing new services, so our customers won't feel a pause as we continue to do what we do.
How about the tracking of unpaid taxes, of taxes that perhaps you could assume through AI, through computer intelligence in some way, that is actually owed? How much better do you think the IRS could be at actually ensuring they're getting what they should be getting?
From a technology perspective, if we make a greater investment in artificial intelligence and the use of data, we will have better analytics to track today what we refer to as the tax gap. We will be able to tell citizens more quickly what they owe so that at filing they can settle their tax account. It's much more difficult for the Internal Revenue Service to collect after filing. So as we modernize and move the experience sooner in the process, we believe that technology can help us close that tax gap sooner to address the problems those citizens that just made a simple mistake never wanted to cause.
Nancy, what about the ones that did want to make a mistake? Do you think you'll be able to root that out much more with technology, with artificial intelligence?
I do believe that through the use of artificial intelligence, through changing how we use information reporting, the data that we receive from employers and banks, if we automate that sooner in the process, conduct matching earlier, as opposed to our legacy systems that, that process happens months and months later. I do believe that automation and more engagement with information reporting can help close that tax gap for all types of tax situations.
Of course, what caught a lot of headlines, certainly the media got excited about the headlines that came out last week, talking about crypto payments in particular, and those above 10,000 should be reported, and indeed reported to the IRS. Of course, of its very nature, crypto is in some ways anonymous, but also deeply trackable and, there forever on a public ledger. How much do you get excited by the role that the IRS might be playing within cryptocurrencies, but also blockchain in and of itself as an underlying technology?
I'm very excited about the Internal Revenue Service's role in technology in general. The Internal Revenue Service required a cryptocurrency indicator on tax return filing last year, so we've been trying to be very active in this space. Again, the investment in modernizing technology will ensure that government has an equal playing field in that space. We continually are adding new features to ensure a seamless experience for our taxpayers. In fact, in the last year, we have seen an increase of 112% in taxpayers using their online account with the Internal Revenue Service. We have a new feature out there where citizens no longer have to go put something in an envelope and put a stamp on it. They can immediately upload documents to us. In fact, our notices are now either available through a taxpayer's online account, or if they chose to receive them in the mail, they can click on a scan code and go to a site where they can upload documents to us. So as we provide our digital services more timely to our citizens, we believe that we will make that tax filing easier and therefore help reduce the tax gap.
And cheaper, I guess, for people actually to be filling out their taxes. I mean, that seems to have also been a cost that's increased substantially for individuals, is just the cost of doing their taxes. Do you think in some way we might be able to save, the efficiency will go up, people might be able to manage it themselves a little bit more?
I do believe that we will make the process more simpler. I do know that many of our citizens rely on tax professionals to help them. As a CIO, I'm not going to address the cost of our citizens relying on professionals. I can tell you we do have top-notch tax professionals in the communities. And in addition, the Internal Revenue Service does provide volunteer income tax assistance for those taxpayers who could not otherwise afford to visit a paid preparer.
Nancy, just when you're talking about the changes you've already made, clearly when it's going to cloud, when you're being able to, ask for people to give their information about crypto payments, but indeed start to be able to perhaps track a lot more in terms of the AI. What technology investments have best served you since you took over in an acting capacity 2019, but in a formal capacity as of this year?
I would say that the investments that have served us the most are in the online services space and in the cybersecurity space. I like to say in the technology space that the bad guys can move a lot faster than government can move. The Internal Revenue Service has an extremely strong focus on protecting taxpayer data and ensuring outstanding cybersecurity. In fact, we ensure the protection of our tax system against more than 2.5 million unauthorized attempts per day.
Wow.
We mitigate more than 2.5 million unauthorized attempts to access taxpayer information a day. And in a year, more than 140 million malicious email attempts to protect our systems. In my mind, the biggest investment is online services and in cybersecurity.
Have you had any close calls? Have you, is that what keeps you up at night? Is that the biggest fear factor, that in some way it becomes unnervingly obvious that you're unable, we've just had public infrastructure of the US from an energy perspective hacked. Is that something that keeps you up at night?
I will tell you, any CIO who tells you they don't worry about cybersecurity attacks isn't being completely truthful. I get paid to stay up at night to worry about that stuff so that our data is protected. Do I believe that IRS doesn't have top-notch cybersecurity? We have the best security that the current funds can buy. Are we always looking over our shoulder to do better? Absolutely, we are. Are we concerned at this moment over upcoming threats? That's what keeps us strong in that space, and that's what I expect from my cybersecurity team.
Are there any anecdotes, any moments that you've sort of looked back and gone, that was a really good day. That was really something that, we knocked that out of the park. That was something really significant that we managed to achieve when perhaps we didn't think so?
I will tell you, we never planned for extended filing seasons. In fact, last year was the longest tax filing season in history. Did we plan to do that along with issuing economic impact payments, along with protecting the health and safety of our employees? As I look back to what we accomplished in 2020, I am so proud to be a part of the government and to be the CIO at Internal Revenue Service. In fact, last week, May 17th, was our tax filing deadline for this year. We broke a record. We processed more than 15 million individual tax returns on tax day, which was a record. We did that in addition to issuing economic impact payments. We've issued more than 165 million economic impact payments this year and put more than $388 billion in the hands of our citizens, those people who need that money to pay their bills, to buy their medications. As I look back over the last year, I so regret what our employees have had to go through, but I am so proud of the work that the Internal Revenue Services does and how we've really helped this country.
Nancy, if you don't get the money that's currently being talked about, what do you do?
We are really focused on reducing our current operating costs. I will continue to look for places to turn off old technology, to reduce operating costs so that we can use that savings to modernize where possible. I can also make a commitment for all of your viewers that if we are funded for additional modernization money, we will make a difference that our citizens will notice and become more efficient and provide stronger services.
And do you have a view on how much more you could bring in terms of taxes if your efficiency could just be wound up that much more from a tech perspective? Is it the technology that could really bring that to bear, do you think?
I do believe technology can bring that to bear. I, as a CIO, am not even going to project the revenue to be raised in that space. I'll let our research experts respond to that in a future show.
Very good answer. And lastly, just, the thing that excites you the most, the next, you took it on formally February 2021. What do you hope 2022 brings you? What are you most excited about bringing forward as the CIO?
I'm excited about the changes that are on the cusp. This is a great time to be in technology with AI, with great support in the cybersecurity space. In fact, on May 12th, the president issued an executive order focusing on improving the nation's cybersecurity. I am really excited to have that kind of support for what government does in the technology space.
Nancy, we want to thank you so much for your time today. Great range of conversation. Thank you so much, Nancy Seeger, of course, of the IRS, the Chief Information Officer there. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for the CIO Exchange, Transforming Government Workspaces. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and we welcome your feedback. Please do write to us on Twitter using #CIO Exchange. Thanks again to our speakers and to you for being such an engaging audience. We also would like to thank Google Chrome Enterprise for supporting today's event. For more information from Google Chrome Enterprise, please visit the resource tab on your screen right now. A replay of today's event will be available on BloombergLive.com along with an event highlights article. Enjoy the rest of your day.